of a setup like this, when I create a new project and this goes live, the architect will be able to see the BIM plan. They'll also be able to see the folder structure of the admin and the project files folder. So they'll be able to see the folder path that got them to 04 BIM plan, but they won't see any other folders under admin. So this is how you can lock people out of sections of your project. Design, where the architect has to work on their stuff. They have access to architecture, they have access to structural. Revit live links will work, it's all set up. There is a feature I want to show you where you can turn off the visibility of the folder path. This is not a template function, but as a project admin, you may want to do this. If you don't want them to see the admin folder or the project files folder, it hides this. I'm going to show you all how to do that right now. So in my docs project, all the settings for each of the modules is on the far right. It's a little confusing sometimes, but I go to advanced settings and you just turn on or off show folder path. If you turn this off, if the user cannot see the folder, they won't see the folder structure that leads them to that folder, if that makes sense.
And do users typically prefer that, or they like to see the root folder, even if they cannot access them directly?
Well, users generally, as we found, actually do like seeing that. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. They actually do like seeing the folder structure. And I'll explain it if I can find where I just was. Here we are. Here it is. So on the right, with the show folder path turned off, notice that it files 04 BIM plan as if it was on the same level as 01 design in the folder structure. Versus I can clearly see on the left with the default behavior that the BIM plan is under my admin structure. So that's why most people actually like seeing the default behavior. The good news is they won't see any of the sister folders in admin. They just see the folder path that got them to 04 BIM plan. And ultimately, it kind of just boils down to how you want to manage your security and how you want to manage your data, right?
Yeah. There's a question from John Segler. It seems like using roles for permission levels instead of company, you will give engineers permission to edit other disciplines' data.
Yeah, that's a great talking point. And let me explain how we do it, and I will explain how I did it at my previous firm. So because we have engineering in-house, we just use the term engineer. We don't use mechanical engineer, structural engineer, plumbing engineer, electrical engineer. We don't subdivide engineering. You can totally set up your permissions so that when somebody's added to the project, you assign them the role that matches the folder they should be working in. So I have a team that's electrical engineer. I add, Sparky the engineer to that project. I give him the electrical engineering role. Now he can work in the electrical engineering world, or he can, but he can't work in anyone else's folder, if that makes sense. What we used to do at my previous firm is we would break it down, and it ended up, the problem being is unless your project managers really understand how your permissions functions, you spend a lot of time just troubleshooting permissions. And I'm going to go back to the BIM 360 team days. This is a high trust environment at its core. And you really need to have conversations with your project partners like, hey, everything will go smoothly if you just kind of work in your team folder. And if you need something out of the architecture or structural folder, you just reach out. But yes, you can dial it in if you want. We personally have earmarked the electrical, mechanical, structural, and plumbing engineering roles for electrical, mechanical, structural, and plumbing submittals in Autodesk Build. So when those submittal types come in, they automatically go to the correct person. Okay, so this is a pretty brief conversation about attributes. So you can add attributes to folders and files in Autodesk Construction Cloud. This is going to be a really short conversation because I really don't know the best way to use this. I imagine it becomes much more useful when you start reporting on files and you start using third-party connections to tap into your data. But I have seen teams that will create an attribute called reviewed, and then they just say it's just yes, no. Like, so has the project manager reviewed this? Yes. Have they not? No. And it's just a data field. It's like a parameter in Revit. I don't particularly like that because, as you'll see in a second, like there's actually a review mechanism you can set up in Docs that serves to actually do reviews, and it manages reviews. But you could just remember that you can add parameters called attributes to any file or folder in the Autodesk construction file. And I think they could be a number, they could be a date, or they could be a text string. And that's pretty much it. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about reviews. The review process, very simply, is just, I have a chunk of data, I want to give it to somebody else, and I want them to review it. Or I could give that to multiple somebody else's, and they review it, right? It's also kind of used as like a poor man's submittal, right? Because Autodesk Docs is very cheap to get into as far as like how expensive Autodesk products can be. So you can create and pre-configure review settings, and these tie into your permissions. And we'll dive into actually the creation of a review process here in a second. But on the left are all the different types of reviews you can create for your projects. The simplest one is just a one-step review. I send it to somebody, they review it, it comes back. Then there's 2 steps, 3 steps. There's like, you can have like full committees involved in a review process if you really need to. And I'm assuming this supports more complicated folder management processes like ISO 19650 and so on. We just have one out of the box, and that's owner review. I'm going to show you guys how to set that up.
Just a quick question. What kind of files do you typically review? Is it models, PDFs, other files, BIM execution plans?
Yeah, so you can bundle anything in a review.
Okay.
What we are currently using it for, and we're still mostly testing this, but we're getting positive feedback, is adding the owner to our project. We send like the CD or milestone deliverable via review to them, and then they can like approved, noted, questions, things like that, right? It's really great because we've really struggled in the past to quantify owner review or owner approval of scopes of work or deliverables, and this like makes it concretely clear. So I'm going to show you, this is my testing, this is the template project. You could do this, you could do everything I'm about to show you actually in a template as opposed to in a project. So when I go to create a review, whoops, that's if it's already defined. I'm going to go here to settings, so it gets me to, okay, now I'm going to create an approval workflow. So this is an approval workflow. I just want to do one-step review, me, client back. All right, so this is going to be my workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, client review. Give it a description. And then you can actually see the process, and that gray bar on next to the steps will update as I change this review. So who can initiate this review? I can, because I'm in a project, I can pick people, but this one can only be done by role at the template level if you want to preset these reviews. So I want the engineer and I want the architect to be able to use this approval. And then for each step, there's an approver, and I can come in here and I can assign it to owner. So when this review is created, it will automatically go to the owner once it's initiated. Let's say I want to give them, let's give them, 7 business days. I don't want to do calendar days. I want to do work days. It does not include, I don't think it accounts for holidays. So you just need to be aware of that. And if you want the owner to be able to kick this back, you can enable the ability to kick it back to the initiator if needed. And then this is where it sort of becomes a submittal process, right? You can create different values for the approval steps. So it's basically approved or rejected. And we say rejected, but we'll say, for information. And then you could change this little icon to say, hey, it's just for information. We're not approving this because approval has like a risk implication to it. And then this is what I really like is when it's done, you can say, hey, I want you to copy the files that were approved, everything that's been submitted. I want you to put that in a specific folder. And we have in our shared folder, a folder for the owner that just shared to owner. And that's where we'll drop it. So when it gets approved, it puts a copy of everything that was approved in the folder that's for the owner. And then you've got notes for the workflow. And if you want people to be able to update attributes, you can. But then that's basically it. And once it's done, now under my approval workflows, sorry, let me go back to my reviews. Now I can create, if I pick a file here. I don't think I actually have any files. So there we go, I have a Revit file here. Now I can come in here and say, all right, I'm going to send this to my client review process. So reviews are really cool. I would highly recommend you check them out if you can. So I am going to go into issues now. Issues is one of the most powerful tools in Autodesk Construction Cloud. Because like I'm guilty of it too. I write things down on paper, but I can't report on paper. My project manager can't see what's going on in my notebook. But if I use issues, everything in issues reports upward. So you can see what issues you have on all your projects, and so can your project manager. Issues can be pre-set up. And I want you to approach issues like it's just a to-do. It's just a question. It's just a thing that needs to be addressed. People get really hung up on the organization of issues and what words mean. It's really not as complex as people make it out to be. If you just put, it's just something that needs to be done, right? It's like, it's a to-do on my to-do list. It makes it much easier. You can go into the issues module, go to the settings on the right, and then these are the different things at the bottom that you can program into your issues. So you have categories. These are just buckets, right? These hold different types of issues. You can almost think of this like it's like a family and a type. A family of issues is coordination. A family of issues is commissioning. Everything with the lock is out of the box. You can't remove it from your project, but you can deactivate it. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to permissions, for issues. Just kind of think of like what stuff you typically want to record and you want to track to completion.
Just a quick question. Are the name of the different kind of issues, categories, are these set for a company or they're set in a template?
They are set at the project template level.
Template, okay.
Yep, so you can predefine all of your issues for your projects before they go live. So here you're seeing this is a snippet from a couple of our projects. I'm just showing you on the left, you can just pick a category and turn it on or off. We have whole categories that are reserved for construction administration, and that's all they're used for. So when the project starts, these are all turned off by default. And then when we get to CA, the project team turns them on. And what that does is that just prevents us from using CA geared issues during design development in CD. Within each category, there are types. So these are the actual things that you're identifying. You can give them like a little up to 3-character note, ADA, BC. This is out of the box for design. You'll notice that accessibility, door hardware, and existing condition and life safety are all turned off because to us, those are all building code issues. So everything that's building code related, we just use the building code issue. You can add issues if you want. You can customize them. What you want to think about is like, what do you want to track? If I wanted to know all of a specific type of issue across my project, how would I start documenting that? And this is where custom fields can come in. You can create custom fields. It's very simple. It's like adding parameters to issues. These facilitate coordination, filtering, reporting, process improvement. For example, all of our issues have a specification dropdown. So when you create an issue, you can tie it to a specification. And it's literally just a parameter in the issue that you can set. We also have one called related discipline. So if you want to, like, if it's an architectural coordination thing, but you need to talk to the plumber, you'll say related discipline plumbing. That way the architect knows to like go talk to the plumber. And then you have root causes. This is really much more about process improvement. We haven't gotten